It was a landslide victory for the main opposition Democratic Party and another crushing defeat for the ruling People Power Party. South Korea's 22nd general election granted the Liberal DP more than enough seats to secure a single majority at the 300-seat National Assembly, dealing a huge blow to the Yoon administration. Meanwhile, the new Rebuilding Korea Party, led by disgraced former Justice Minister Cho Kuk, took the election by storm, clinching the new assembly's third party position, while other minor opposition parties suffered a major slump. For an in-depth analysis of election results and their implications, we're now joined by Song Se-ryun, professor of law at Kyung Hee University. It's great to have you back.
Hello, happy to join you.
Accompanying us tonight is Jun-mo, professor at Konkuk University's Department of Public Administration. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
My pleasure.
Professor Song, let's start with you. Many saw this coming, but the win was much bigger than we had expected. What's your overall assessment of the election results?
Right, this election was a referendum election taking place in the middle of roughly middle of the presidential term. And President Yoon had a low approval ratings for extended periods of time, so it was largely expected the defeat would be coming. But it is a strong message. They showed the dissatisfaction with the economy, his appointments, his handling of some sensitive matters like the doctors' strikes, culture war issues. So there are many things that motivated people to show up and show their dissatisfaction. I think that the message also is for a change in the future. He already changed a lot of personnel, but the real question is whether he would change his styles, his focus on the measures and the especially the reform measures and so on and so forth. So coming days, we will see a lot of changes, hopefully, with the president putting in place a lot of different devices, personnels, and also his communication style would change. I think the best place to start might be reaching out and talking to the opposition leaders and see what kind of plans they can see together going forward.
All right, as you've highlighted, this election was implicitly considered as a referendum on the current government, and the results clearly showed a dramatic shift in the public sentiment from just about 2 years ago when President Yoon took office. And this is also a way of the people sending a strong message to the government, asking for changes, and hopefully we will see some changes down the road. And as you've suggested, perhaps initiating a dialogue with the opposition party may be a good start. Dr. Kim, we also want to get your thoughts. Were the results in line with your expectations? And what were some of the notable things that caught your attention?
Yeah, regarding expectations, in some part, yes, the other parts, not really. Peculiar observations first, we saw proportional representation parties show divergent result. For example, the New Reform Party led by Lee Jun-suk and the New Future Party led by the former Prime Minister Lee Nak-yeon clearly experienced something called Death Valley phenomenon, which describes an ordeal after they made new parties. In contrast, Cho Kuk Party got a great debut, while other small parties didn't show up on the scene, so it was quite divergent. Second, balancing power of people. Voters chose the check and balance by giving a majority vote to the government opposing party, while the People Power Party managed to defend the critical line to avoid the constitutional amendment. Thirdly, we saw relatively high early voting turnout, which was 5% higher than the previous election figure. So which made people expect very high final voting turnout, but most of the 5% increase was canceled out, and we got about 0.8% modest increase, which was 67% over the previous election.
So the third-party competition was worth taking note of, which has diversified the party structure, the party landscape in Korea's political arena. And you've also mentioned that the high voter turnout was also grabbed your attention. And speaking of which, Professor Song, voter turnout stood at 67%, the highest in 32 years. Early voting turnout also hit the highest level for a general election, surpassing 30%. What factors do you believe contributed to the record level electoral participation?
I think that there's several things. I think that there is a pent-up frustration among the voters and dissatisfaction, and they were motivated to come out and express what they think. So the voter turnout reflects their willingness to voice their opinions. And second, I think it has to do a little bit with the voter demographic changes. This is the first time where 60 years or older voting bloc is bigger than the younger generation. And the older people tend to vote in higher rates. So I think it is a contributing factor. And also, I think I should mention that this primary preliminary voting is such a convenient device for people when they try to vote. You drop in anywhere with any of the IDs that you have. It's a very convenient device for political participation. And I think it's settling into kind of an ordinary practice of the citizens. So I think that those taken together might still push up the voting rates, and I think it's generally a good thing.
So a number of factors that led to the record high voter turnout, some of which you've mentioned were the frustrations, of course, that led people to go to the polls and express their opinions. And also there were the Korea's aging demographic changes, because Korea's older people, there's a tendency that older senior citizens tend to vote for a certain party. So a lot of factors there, but all of this you think is quite positive for Korea's electoral culture. Now, Professor Kim, what do you believe are the primary factors that determined the final results of the parliamentary election?
There could be many reasons and analysis for the result, but it could be sensible to summarize in several ways. But it's also not easy to pinpoint factors, but instead we can find some clues from which we can trace the issues back. First, communication with other groups is the first clue to touch. All policy issues, especially at the agenda setting stages, communications are needed to increase visibility of the policy. So this could be one clue. Secondly, fatigue mood. Big policies bring fatigues socially, which is inescapable. But when coupled with economic dimension, the fatigue can be expanded and extended. So that could be another clue. Thirdly, what I call minus premium for the ruling party. We generally think about premium enjoyed by the ruling party, but whenever things go wrong or don't go well, it is very easy that government opposing parties can take some issues and make an attack. But from the point of ruling party, it is not easy to defend against those attacks. So taking all this together can boil down into improved policy process and increased communication.
The unfavorable results for the ruling party reflect citizens' discontent in various social issues, and I think you've highlighted a very interesting point that most citizens are mostly angry at the government. The greater number of citizens tend to be upset and discontent with the current government than 100% satisfied. So there's that factor there. And Professor Song, 161 versus 90 constituency seats. These two are the key numbers that we hear a lot on news reports, and the Democratic Party could take up to 190 plus seats when combined with other minor opposition parties. Let's take a closer look at what the number of seats at the National Assembly means. Could you explain to us how the legislative process works depending on party seat allocation?
Well, since the landscape stays the same, which means that between the 180 seats and 200 seats, what they can do and they cannot do largely stays the same. They don't have the two-thirds majority, so the president would not have a veto overridden outright, and there won't be any impeachment effort carried out by the opposition blocks or the constitutional change. Those are not possible without the collaboration. Same as before, DP party can pass a law by themselves as they have the majority outright. If the ruling party delays the bill, DP can stop for example, filibuster because they have a 180 votes with the coalition of the Cho Kuk party. So those things don't change. I think one notable change might be the dynamics of the party line confrontations going forward. Before, when the DP and the ruling party are at loggerheads, the PP lawmakers had a motivation to follow the party line, follow the president who tried to control the party because they needed the nomination for the general elections. Well, the general elections is over. So going forward, depending on the issues, there might be more independent moves from the lawmakers, and if not, there's just a threat of it. But the relationship might be different going forward. In fact, in extreme cases, there were some the lawmakers in the PP side wondering aloud whether the president should leave the party. I think it's a minority opinion at this point, but it's in the same vein. The relationship between the president's office and PP party itself might go through some changes, and that might be reflected in the legislative and National Assembly actions going forward.
Whether the main opposition DP can break the 200-seat barrier was one of the key watch points of this election, because that would have given them immense power, immense authority to even override presidential vetoes and even amend constitution. Political landscape would have looked very different if the DP was to secure that supermajority of 200 seats, but the ruling PPP managed to block that. So no drastic changes are expected with regards to the legislative proceedings. Now, Professor Kim, the big question is how DP's parliamentary majority and the influence of other minor opposition parties as well would impact the Yoon administration's running of state affairs during the remainder of President Yoon's term. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, now with the election is over, it is possible to forecast the contour or terrain of the Korean politics in sketches. People Power Party should take the role of facilitating dialogue and conversation with other parties and other groups, while Democratic Party should take heavy responsibility of carrying voters' eyes on their back. That's the basic assumption. In actual policy issues, I can raise three policy areas. First one is health politics. Independent of these election issues, this has been an important issue in domestic Korean politics as well as in other countries. Health politics refers to government decisions, regulations, and important decisions made by the government and stakeholders, including medical community. So in one word, health politics means how much power doctors have. And in affecting this medical power, there are about three factors, but these are factors for strengthening their power at the same time, factors that bring momentum for change. First is the the share of health expenditure in GDP. In the United States case, it's about 16.6% of GDP spent in healthcare. In European countries, it's about 11% average. In Korea, it's like 9.7%. So compared to defense budget, usually spent in 2% of GDP or 3% of GDP, is a great amount of resource given to one sector, medical and health sector. Second, the proportion of aging population is going to grow. Okay, it could be half of population in several decades. So it's becoming a new sector as well as a new market. Thirdly, we are expecting new technologies in the field, robotics and AI, diagnosis in the medical field. So putting together and in the middle of this mingling of these factors, we have experienced a shortage of doctors in specific sectors, for example, heart surgeons, gynecologists, pediatricians. We are in short. We know this in and out of medical community. So taking all this together, and this medical profession is at the crisis of change, and perhaps medical professions could be the last occupational category where this impact from new technology is encroaching upon. And this change is not easy to evade from. It's inescapable. So taking all this together, like three factors affecting medical power, supply-demand issues, and this all fiscal issues, government should manage this issue by facilitating discussion with other groups. Second policy issue is fiscal austerity. We all know that tax revenue is not that great this time. We know that construction sector and financial sector is in trouble. And we also need momentum for economic growth. To do that, we need to increase research and development budget, which government reduced last year. So all these things will open up new avenue for new politics. And thirdly, old and existing homework from previous regimes, like low birth rate issues, generational gap issues, pension issues, will have to be resolved during the last part of the administration.
So President Yoon's various domestic policies will face a series of headwinds now that the DP retains its parliamentary majority. So dialogue is now needed more than ever. And you've highlighted some of the important issues that need to be resolved, and that include health politics as well as Korea's fiscal austerity. Now, Professor Song, some say that Cho Kuk, the leader of the new Rebuilding Korea Party and disgraced former Justice Minister, is the biggest winner of this election. Winning 12 seats at the assembly, he's expected to wield significant power with other minor opposition parties, but his legal risks remain. Give us the latest updates on his legal woes, and how do you gauge the potential impact of the legal challenges on his political influence moving forward?
Right. For a moment when the exit poll was announced, the Cho Kuk party could have been the party that puts the number of the opposition bloc over 200. That would have made him a real party, a power broker, but that did not happen. But his legal challenges remain. He has been already sentenced to 2 years in prison with some fines on charges of documentary fraud, bribery, and abuse of power related to his daughter's admission to schools. And the appellate court already affirmed it. So only thing remain is the Supreme Court to decide his fate. If finalized, he cannot stand for the public office, and his lawmaker badge he just earned will be taken away. So he has probably a pretty difficult options going forward, regardless of his influence in the National Assembly. He could lead from the prison cell if he goes to prison, or if this is a worrying scenario. There's some speculation from his words as well that he would try to resolve or allay his legal risk by his political influence. like the Lee Jae-myung, he has a legal risk, and if that becomes his primary goal, then his actions, political actions and words, could be reflecting on his legal risk. For example, this is just a scenario where he might try to delay the court court proceedings by a lot of actions in the legislature, so that the delay would be significant enough to cover the presidential election, so he could stand for president as a candidate or as somebody else, and expect that some kind of presidential pardons come down along the way. Regardless of the motivation, when the legal risk becomes a motivation to take the course of your political actions, this distorts the proceedings and the policy directions. So that would be one of the worrying scenarios. But with the political power that he earned, I think the primary focus should be opening up the dialogue channel with the ruling party and the president's office, and see what kind of collaboration could take place going forward. I think that would be the biggest sort of brownie points from the voters going forward.
All right, we're already running out of time, so just very quickly before we let you go, Dr. Kim, what are your biggest hopes and concerns regarding the 22nd National Assembly?
Yes, we can divide that issue into international and domestic issues. Internationally, for example, U.S. presidential election is coming this November. President Yoon's government should deal with North Korea, China, Russia, Japan issue, international conflict issues, all this coming together. So that's one avenue. Domestically, one key word is system upgrade and change. So it'll include deregulation of the old law, implementing new regulation for the emerging field if necessary, job creation and economic growth, and especially during campaign period, both parties promised too many things, and it's time to cool down and to figure out what is feasible in what sequence to make real policy. And also preparing for the next Korea's presidential election in 3 years is a big task for the government as well as for the National Assembly. And I'd like to close by citing a movie script. We will find a solution as we have done in the past.
Well, President Yoon Suk-yeol has vowed to reform state affairs to reflect people's will, so hopefully the Yoon administration and the opposition bloc will find a way to enhance dialogue and find a way to make a unified voice, especially on critical economic issues that help revitalize people's livelihoods. Thank you so much, Professor Kim and Professor Song, for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for watching, and be sure to tune in same time tomorrow to join our conversation. Goodbye for now.